So I think we're starting. So I'd like to say hello to everybody and thanks for joining today. It's 2:35, so I think I will get started. If you can see my slides, it's great. If you can click on the slide view, that'll give you a larger view to the slides. And then you don't have to look at my face as large as it seems to be right now. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining today. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you more about shifting to digital interviewing in the virtual workplace. We are going through significant changes with COVID-19, and all of us are really struggling with this challenge of how do we address the virtual workplace? We don't have this luxury. Most of us have a face-to-face environment. Most of us are still working from home. Some of us are transitioning back to work. And so naturally, this gives us the challenge of how do we create humanity or keep humanity in our hiring processes, in our engagement, and find that perfect blend of digital and video connection so that we still have a human connection while being in a digital environment. So now we all live in front of a video camera all day long. And I don't know about you guys, but I personally, even being in the video business, video software business here, I find it exhausting. And so it's interesting. Face-to-face meetings seem to be a little less exhausting. So it's a really interesting learning curve that we are all dealing with now. And so part of that is, of course, that we're looking at ourselves all the time. And some of us don't want to be looking at ourselves all the time. So that is a little bit tiring. So it really is an adjustment. But on the other hand, it has given us a fantastic way to get used to being on video. And so given that we are in the video interviewing business, that's good news for us because it means that people are more understanding of what video conferencing is, video interviewing is, whether it's a one-way or a live video interview interaction. And so we have this mass forced event for everyone to really become accustomed to what video is. And really getting used to seeing yourself on camera and getting comfortable with it. So that's really exciting because it means that we have a much more mainstreamed environment into digital interviewing as a new way to address virtual hiring practices. So what hasn't changed is that the ideal candidate is still that elusive person that we're trying to find. It's that individual that is has all those characteristics that that we're looking for. We want to have everything in that great fit hire, and it's very difficult to find. And now we have the additional challenge of not necessarily getting the chance to meet this person directly face to face because of some of the concerns about COVID and the new shift to digital and virtual hiring in workplaces. The other element that we are looking at is a shift from resume screens, let's say, to more of a competency-based, more holistic view of candidates at the first stage. So most employers are coming to us and really wanting to address how do we look at and meet and consider candidates earlier on a more competency basis. So that could mean any number of things in terms of what it is you're looking for in any given role. But it could mean judgment, reasoning, potential of that candidate in terms of attitude, open-mindedness, diverse mindset. It could mean leadership capability or competency, drive, values-based, or any combination of this. So we do a lot of work with companies who, for example, are looking for people who have positive attitude, or people who have a customer service sensibility, or who have a strong sales performance potential. So those are some examples of competencies that we see are fairly common in the hires that companies are making. So wanting to bring those competencies forward and be able to assess for those even at the very first stage. So this gives you, most of us follow, what was a conventional workflow in terms of hiring, where you start with the application and resume screen. You move to maybe a phone screen based on a short list from a resume screen that runs through your applicant tracking system. And then you have a behavioral assessment potentially, or some other second stage or third stage interview or screening process, and it could go on and on and on. Companies like Amazon do more than 20 interviews in some cases. And then finally move to the short list, where you're dealing with maybe 5 shortlisted candidates that you're actually going to meet on a face-to-face interview basis. So what is challenging about this process is that at the application or resume stage, you have a very limited view of the candidate. So you're looking at text on a page, you're looking at people who have self-described, maybe they've even hired a resume writer. They are talking about their skills and their experience, but that's not necessarily all of the things that you're looking for in terms of what a candidate can bring to work. It doesn't give you a question and answer engagement environment. It doesn't give you the ability to learn a more holistic, gather a more holistic picture of the candidate at that first stage. And there's really a strong issue around bias, name bias now, that candidates are struggling with, because a lot of companies are screening individuals out based on names. So one of the things that we need to be looking at overall is where may these biases live within our even first stage resume screen process, and how do we avoid that from happening, because we're really missing out on really fantastic candidates. So at the next stage, the challenge here is that phone screens require scheduling, of course. So that takes a lot of time, a lot of back and forth with the candidates. And you also have an audio connection with a candidate, but you don't necessarily have a visual connection with the candidate. So you're missing out on that opportunity to meet the candidate visually and through audio. At the next interview stage, let's call it a situational or behavioral assessment or some other form of interview. This can often be delivered in an old school format, and it's not necessarily modernized or engaging the way candidates would want or expect it to be. So candidates are becoming much more demanding of a self-serve automated process where they have the ability to do things from the privacy of their home on their own time. And so some of these interviewing methods really have to be examined through the lens of the candidate. They're looking at the way you interview, and they are considering that in terms of the type of company you are overall. So if you're using modern technology that's mobile first and engaging, that's going to be reflected on your employment brand. And then finally, the face-to-face interview. Well, we all know that we have challenges with that right now because we're not doing a lot of face-to-face meetings. And we also know that that requires scheduling as well. So there's all kinds of opportunities for improvement around automation in this traditional workflow. So that really is why we're shifting our focus to digital screening, interviewing, and assessment. And so you'll hear me say throughout this period of time together, when I talk about digital interview, I'm not really focused on video per se, but more so on digitization of an interview process that allows you to do things like self-scheduling, automation of moving through one step to the other, standardization of asking questions, as well as standardization of the way your teams score using common scorecards and rubrics. So it doesn't need to be video. It could be audio, for example, as a method, or even using this, for example, our platform or any digital interviewing platform should make it available to you to have text-based questions, multiple choice questions, video or audio. So, and that is the case with our platform. And that's what you want to look at when you're looking at digital interviewing systems overall. So as an example, as you can see here, this really can vary depending on your flow and your stage. You may find that you want to do a resume screen and then a one-way interview and then a live interview. You may find that you want to do a live interview or even a panel interview at second stage or even first stage. So it really depends on how many interviews you do, who's involved in the interviewing process, and where you want to introduce the live interview. But with this suite, you have the ability to build your workflow your way, and that can be determined on a role by role basis. So it's very flexible, and it's very convenient for candidates to be able to do from the comfort of their home based on a deadline that you give them, but there's no scheduling involved, and that's a real benefit. So if we look at the traditional workflow and then we layer on the digital interviewing workflow, now you have the ability at the first stage to ask video questions that are embedded right into your application experience right from your career site. So you can add video presentations there, you can add welcome a video, you can create a video engagement process with your resume and your application, and also invite candidates to respond to questions in addition to submitting their resume. So you are going to be getting more data from the candidates at the first stage. At the second stage, you can replace a phone screen with a one-way interview where you can generate a questionnaire, a set of questions, maybe it's 3 or 5 in the questionnaire. You can send that to the candidate, a list of candidates going out all at one time with a specific deadline, and then they can respond to that at the convenience within their schedule as long as it's by the deadline, and then those responses are posted to your dashboard and you can review them and share them among your hiring team and use a common set of processes and metrics to actually score those candidates. So what's important here is that you have a consistent, structured process that is equal and the same for each of the candidates that respond. And they have the ability to respond using video or even opting to use audio only. And then moving along, you have with the behavioral assessment, you can deliver that behavioral assessment as a behavioral situational questions in video or audio format, or a combination of audio or written, and even multiple choice. And then with the face-to-face interview, of course, you can have an interview environment like this, where you can do a panel interview with multiple interviewers or a group interview where you have multiple interviewees. And that can be recorded and then shared with your hiring team for decision-making and review. So the key here is that you have a digital interview system that can work alongside your other HRS or applicant tracking system, but it gives you a full suite of digital interviewing tools that can integrate directly with your workflow and make the process easy for you to digitize that overall experience. So underpinning all of this is the very important point about bias reduction. And that is made available to you by standardizing this overall candidate experience, delivering the same questions to candidates using the same technology, giving them the same parameters in terms of number of re-records, format of interview response, and length of response. So there's no variation on the candidate side in terms of experience, and you've created a comfortable experience for them. And at the same time, there's no variation on the recruiter review standpoint either. So what you've done is you've really structured and standardized an overall experience and then created a highly accessible experience for candidates. So you can make available at all times the ability for a candidate to opt into the choice to do audio, for example, instead of video. So those things are all available within the system so that you can create a fair and level playing field and have more transparency in the way decisions are made in terms of defensibility. So we all know that transparency is the number one in terms of being able to share data and create a digital record and defensibility line on how decisions are made for each individual. And this allows us to really remove the subjectivity from one recruiter to the next, who may be applying some of their own unique lenses. So using this digital format, you can have a structured, standardized workflow across multiple interview steps, and you can move to a short list process very quickly, and all from the convenience of your desktop or your mobile device. So this is all accessible directly online with one click. There are no downloads from the candidate experience, so there's no interruptive experience, and it's all widely accessible technology that lives right within the devices that all candidates have. So there's nothing that is additional that candidates would need to acquire in order to be able to respond. All you need is the webcam in your device and an internet connection. So what you're seeing here is digital scorecards. So underpinning the system where you have the ability to send mass emails, you also have the ability to rate and share and comment. And that is digital scorecarding. So within the scorecard, you can build your own set of competencies that you want to measure and have multiple formats for displaying those scores. So it could be a 0 to 100 scale, or it could be satisfactory, meets expectations, exceeds expectations. So there's multiple ways for those things to be presented, and you can create those on a job rec by job rec basis. So you can create scorecard templates, you can create questionnaire templates that can be applied. So I wanted to share with you some questions that you want to be thinking about in terms of as you're moving towards considering this digital hiring process and starting to embark on, maybe I'm going to be looking at hiring some people in the coming months. What do I need to be thinking about in terms of digitizing my process? So the first question you want to ask yourself is, at what steps do you want to introduce digital screening and interviewing? So it doesn't need to be a full overhaul of your system. It can be simply, I want to introduce more video at the front, or I want to introduce one-way interviews after a resume screen. So I want to improve my efficiency and by using this technology here. Second, looking at overall standardization of your interviewing workflow and your overall evaluation processes. So looking at structuring question templates, so you can do all of this within a system, standardizing your scorecard measures, and then also looking at moving to more of a competency-based assessment, and really scrutinizing, I think is really important, is looking at that first stage resume screen and say to yourself, how many candidates am I potentially overlooking in this process, and how can I introduce more competency into that first stage? Third, you want to look at how can I use a digital system to increase collaboration, transparency, and defensibility in my measurement and evaluation. So a digital interviewing system will allow you to be able to standardize that and have all of those decisions very easily accessible, associated with in a summarized environment and a report environment, as well as on a candidate by candidate basis, which is all available in the cloud on a hosted basis, as well as something that can be archived and stored. From a candidate perspective, you really want to be thinking about candidate rights and experience. That's number one. So making sure that you are disclosing, and in the case of our system, you have permission waiver that gets presented to the candidate before they enter a digital interview, so that they need to review that and then accept the consent and provide permission before moving forward. you need to be really clear with candidates what you're doing, why you're doing it, what system you're using, what data you're gathering, how long you're holding it for. So those kind of disclosures are important, as well as that acceptance and permission waiver you need to gather from the candidate as they're embarking on that digital experience, so that you can have a record that says, yes, this candidate has given me permission to record and store this, this response. Looking at your technology as well in terms of your overall flow and your applicant tracking system and all the technology you're using, you want to be thinking about what is the workflow and where do I want to integrate these new technologies, this digital interviewing technology, into my workflow, and really put together a process of how that gets done, and it could be done in a phased process where you run two systems parallel and then bring them together in more of a single sign-on environment. So start by looking at the systems that you're using and say, are all of these digital interviewing technologies available to me? And then I would say finally, you want to look at making sure that you are communicating your process to your candidates so they know what they can expect. And I can't stress this enough in terms of sharing with candidates what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what they can expect before embarking on that experience. So, for example, why are we using video? Why am I inviting you to a video interview? What are the benefits for you? What are the benefits for us? You know, this is the opportunity for us to meet you and have the chance to answer questions and give yourself a distinct advantage in this process. You know, that's an example of why you are utilizing digital interviewing in the process. Maybe you wanted to assess for more of a broader set of competencies and you see the resume as a limiting tool at the first stage. Or maybe you want to create a more engaging and gamified environment for the candidate to make it more modern and available and fair. Maybe it's because you want to have more structured, accessible and transparent processes with your candidate experience. So those are things that you want to communicate to your candidates and let them know what they can expect in as they're embarking on the digital interview process. So then they'll feel comfortable, they'll understand, they'll feel comfortable, and they'll know what to expect in the next step. So one of the things that we provide in our waiver when a candidate you know, embarks on the digital any kind of interview process is what we call you know, the candidate bill of rights, the candidate disclosures and options. So this includes the option to record in audio-only format, the option to re-record and review responses before submitting, the option to review results if requested. So these are common rules that a candidate should be have access to if they ever want to take a look at what they've submitted and how you've gone about scoring that. They have the ability to ask to see that. They also have the right to consent prior to entering an interview. So you should never put forward digital interviews without having a consent step. The option to opt out. So if for whatever reason a candidate is not comfortable doing a video interview, you need to make available the audio option. And if the audio option is not available, you need to provide also a written option, for example. And there's a number of other accessibility considerations. You should be looking for a system in our case, for example, that address hard of hearing and blind, as well as other concerns from an accessibility standpoint. So make sure you've audited for those things in the software that you're using. The last two here are the option to request a recall or delete submission from record. So the candidate does have the ability to ask you to do that if that's something that they want, that they're not comfortable having you. They will participate, but they're not comfortable having you hold on to that for the term of the storage. And so in that case, you would need to delete that from your server within a 30-day period and then give them confirmation that that was deleted. And then, of course, the right to standardized, transparent measurement. So that's a really, really important final point here, is to make clear to your candidates why you're using digital interviewing system, how you're going about scoring, how you make decisions on a stage-by-stage basis, and letting them know that everybody is given the same common experience. So I'd like to just close with reminding you, when you're embarking on this next stage, the benefit, of course, of digital video interviews is that you have the ability to combine web, online, and video, and really have a chance to really meet a candidate at one or more stages of the interview process. We all know that candidates more now than ever are extremely comfortable with this digital video interactions. So you probably won't see too much concern with utilizing digital interview in a video format at any stage. But that said, you also want to make available the option for candidates to respond in an audio format, or really in any format. So make sure when you're embarking on digital interviewing that you are making available a multimedia option response. And so that candidates really have the full capability of review and submission based on their choice of media, without any risk of being screened out or any bias being applied. So you want to make sure that you have a system that has that in place. And the key is really, from a candidate perspective, that you want to be looking at structured and standardized processes and defensibility and how you deliver these interview experience, because building trust with your candidate is the #1 priority. And how you deliver this digital interview experience and how you get to know candidates in that process, that digital process, is going to be very, very reflective on how a candidate sees your business. And in a number of the feedback exit surveys we deliver through the system, that is one of the key points that comes forward with the candidate, is that they really like the convenience and the option to do something that's modern, that they can respond to from their phone, that they can do from the privacy of their home, that's very easy for them to do on their timetable, and that they do really expect from companies a modern and sort of video engaging experience. So thanks very much, everyone, for your time and attention today. You can see my contact information on the bottom of the screen here, and I would be happy to answer questions in any time. If you want to reach out to me, I encourage you to come to the website if you have more questions, just to learn more about what digital interviewing is. And it's been a pleasure being with you today. So thank you.